Welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're so excited that you joined us today. My name is Allison O'Connor. I'm with Larimer County Extension up in Fort Collins. My co-pilots today are Cassie Anderson in Adams County and Chris Hilgert, who is our State Master Gardener Coordinator and Ornamental Horticulture Specialist on campus. And our presenter is Mel, who I will introduce in just a couple of slides going forward. As a reminder, CSU is an equal opportunity access and non-discrimination university. If there's anything we can do to accommodate your needs, please let us know. You can type that into the Q&A. Just know that we have more information on our website at the link shown, and we can also put that in the chat if you would like to learn more. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will post it to planttalk.org/webinars. Cassie will also put that link into the chat so you can see what we have done so far this year. We're in September, and then also what's coming up in the next couple of months. We do have these monthly webinars on the second Wednesday of the month at noon. And today, if you have questions for Mel as she's doing her presentation, please use the Q&A to ask anything. We will be sure to address questions at the end. And if there are questions that Cassie, Chris, and I can answer during the presentation, we will be sure to do that. Coming up on October 8th, I will be teaching about Space Invaders, garden variety monsters. So these are the plants that you put in your garden and are maybe regretting your choices. That's what we will be discussing. If you have plants that you would like to share with me that I could address, please put those in the Q&A and I'll try to include them. At the top of the list right now is Russian sage because it's truly out of control. Great pollinator plant, little bit aggressive. So that will be October 8th. You can register for that class. We would love to have you join us. And then we also have webinars in November and December as well. And Chris Hildert would like to tell you a little bit more about Green School, so you might join.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, but I also wanted to take an opportunity to let you know about a couple other programs that we have coming up. These webinars that you're like the one we're having today are awesome free gardening webinars and great resources from our CSU experts to share their knowledge as well. But we would love to have you join us for two upcoming programs. So Green School is also known as our Master Gardener training, but it's not just for Master Gardeners. Green School is open to the public for anyone who's interested in learning more about gardening in Colorado. It's a pretty intense online program. It's a 16-week class that covers everything from botany and soils to vegetables and trees and lawns and fruit trees and Colorado, all focused on Colorado gardening challenges. And these classes are sure to help improve your gardening skills here in Colorado. You can register for Green School at csugreenschool.org. We also have another free webinar that's coming up September 23rd called Chaos Gardening in Colorado. It's a free webinar. We're offering two sessions for the Chaos Gardening on September 23rd, both at noon and 7 p.m. These webinars will also be recorded and we'll post them at planttalk.org/webinars. But if you would like to register beforehand and join us for one of those or both of those webinars, I'll drop the link into the chat. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you for a minute about those programs today, and I'm going to hand it over to Mel.
So without further ado, we have Mel Schreiner joining us today. She is an entomologist in the Tri-River area on the western slope of Colorado, and she'll be delighting us with the art of insect survival. Thanks, Mel, for joining us, and welcome everybody else.
Thanks for having me. This is a great team that you guys have here today. I'm really grateful to be invited. Please let me know if you can't see my slides, team, and I will do something about that. But I'm going to just continue on if there's not an issue. The art of insect survival is a fun talk. I do plan to, let's see here. Why are you not responding? Okay. I am not able to advance my slides here. There we go. Okay, hopefully that advanced for you. But my name is Mel Schreiner or Melissa Schreiner. I serve as the CSU Extension Entomologist for the Tri-River area out here in Grand Junction. And I also am currently using employee study privileges to obtain a PhD in entomology. It'll be several years before I'll have that title, but I'm working with a wonderful insect ecologist in the agricultural biology department, using some of the work I'm doing here in Western Colorado. I'm trying to summarize that so that I can turn that into a degree program. But please never hesitate to reach out to me. I do serve a unique area of Colorado, but I'm happy to take inquiries if you want to reach out. I've got kind of an open door policy there. I just ask that folks, if you realize that you're not within my area, it may be a little bit of time before I reach back out, but I will get to you. Our agenda today is I'm going to introduce what CSU Extension is, and within Extension, my entomology program, we'll define entomology and the benefits of, the creepy crawlies, the critters that we know as the arthropods. And then we'll dive into what this talk is about, camouflage. So I've broken that up into blending in and standing out within the animal kingdom and looking at some of the tools that animals use to basically survive and protect themselves. And we'll go through an identification game together. I'll share resources, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. I'm banking on it. So I hope you guys have some interesting things to add at the end there. But I want to introduce CSU Extension. So we are around the state. We're the land-grant institution in the state of Colorado. We're located up in Fort Collins. The main campus is located up there. But as you can see, many colorful dots around the state represent different CSU offices or research stations that serve the Colorado community. So I work in this red box out on the left of your screen within the yellow western region. And I work off several of the research stations here to conduct research that I apply to help the community answer questions about insects. We work in one of the busiest offices in the state. I think the rural communities of Western Colorado have a long-running and long-standing relationship with Extension. And we see a lot of folks utilize the resources that our offices provide. But it's a joy to work for our land-grant institution. I feel very much rewarded every day getting to go out, whether I'm working with someone solving a problem around insects, or I'm identifying an insect, or I'm talking about something that's beneficial because of insects. There's a lot of variety in the work that I do. I cover a lot of different areas because insects are wonderful and also cause issues in many spaces. They don't know county lines or subject matter. They don't really stay in one area. So I'm working with our agriculturalists, folks that are producers. I'm working with folks that are, specializing within, the horticultural industry, folks that are moving plants, growing plants, caring for plants. I work with arborists. So folks that are working with trees in the urban landscape and also within natural resources and systems there. We're doing big insect surveys across the state of Colorado now that insects are deemed wildlife under, now they're managed by Colorado Parks and Wildlife as of new legislation last year. So there's a lot of interesting knowledge we're trying to gain around insects. But my primary job is focusing on helping to solve issues with commercial businesses. So whether someone is running a farm or is running a brewery and they have flies, or a hospital has an insect outbreak, I'm often called into all of these different spaces to try to provide expertise and hopefully, diminish the fear that I can and get folks the help they need when it's needed. So I really like to think that I'm helping to solve insect-related issues in this region of Western Colorado. At least we're trying to push knowledge forward on some of these really tough pest systems I've been working on, like the corn earworm and Olathe sweet corn, and the invasive species, the Japanese beetle, that's come into urban Grand Junction. So from insect identification to supporting producers with resources or educational programs or trainings, or answering their questions, or just simply coming out on site and being an available resource. I really enjoy working with the community and just applying that research to address the needs that we have as Coloradoans. So, oops, that's a redundant slide. So, oh goodness, it looks like there's some extra slides in here I didn't think were in here. So let me get through here. Here we are. But I focus on arthropod identification. So here's some photos of spiders and very interesting caterpillars. These are examples of photos that I'll get from the community, asking me, who is this? What do I have here? And do I need to be concerned is often a part of that question, but often folks are curious about what they interact with. And I support staff and businesses across mainly the Tri-River area, but the western region of Colorado, just helping to serve that need to have someone identifying insects. I do a lot of insect education with youth and adult learners. We take care of the Western Colorado insect collection, which is right behind me. Some of it's out at an event right now, if you can see some empty spaces. But this is a wonderful way that we're able to interact with community members of all ages. We take this insect collection of about 50 years of insect records. It's about 48 boxes. You can see the individual glass boxes here in the photos. We have a huge insect collection. It's likely the largest in Western Colorado. I haven't proven that, but I'm working on it. I do believe it's one of the largest standing insect collections on this half of the state. And it's shared now with many folks. So this travels and sees thousands of students every year. And we enjoy working within the classroom, but also the farm is also the classroom. So I'm always out doing site visits and working with producers as well. But yeah, we work in pretty much every cropping system. So we also have a full-time research associate that looks at insects using traps. So Melissa Franklin has worked for CSU Extension for about 25 years. She's worked under multiple entomologists, and now I'm privileged to have her helping to really co-run my program. So she's out there passively looking for things that should never show up in our state in all of these wonderful crops we grow. So within sweet corn and within fruit production, this research associate is allowing for that early detection and potentially rapid response if we are to find something we're hoping that we don't find. So when Melissa Franklin finds nothing, it's a very good thing. And there's a lot of work that goes into just answering that question every year. Is there something new? And often the answer is no, which we like to see. But Melissa Franklin deploys over 500 traps in the Tri-River area to ensure that there's that safekeeping of our agricultural commodities here in the region and protecting that local economy. So I'm also a mentor. I take great pride in mentoring folks that are interested in entomology, whether they're a high school student. Typically the age folks start with our program. We've worked with 7 interns or student volunteers since I started in 2022. We work mainly with local colleges, but this year and last we've worked with CSU to bring students out from main campus to learn about entomology in the Western region. And it's been a real joy to mentor these folks. We were able to travel almost 10,000 miles together for the Natural Heritage Program this summer. So we have these wonderful, technicians and interns that are young, early career professionals that are engaging with their Natural Heritage Program, this non-academic department of CSU that is looking at all insect biodiversity across the state. So we were able to, in black, it's what my program covered here, and in orange, that's what our interns were able to cover. So they were a really massive portion of our efforts this year to document insects statewide. But I want to get into the meat of why we're here today. Thank you for letting me introduce our program. It's unique to the state of Colorado. I think it's worth celebrating. So thanks for letting me be a bit long-winded there. But entomology, what I've committed my life to studying, is a type of zoology, the science of studying animals. So this includes, animal biology, behavior, evolution, and, their interactions with ecosystems across the planet. And entomology it's a subset of zoology. So it's really the branch that's concerned with this massive group of invertebrates within that insects, and of course other arthropods. So it's really the study of these, incredible insects that I think often there's a lot of fear around. There's a lot of curiosity around this group of animals. I mean, you can't live with them. You can't live without them. You wouldn't want to live on a planet without insects. I really hope to convince you of that today. But there's many types of entomology. I think it's worth, acknowledging. I do applied extension entomology highlighted there at the bottom. So I'm working with folks on management strategies and doing that educational piece. But there's many types, whether you're describing new species as a systematic entomologist, you're a systemicist, medical entomology. So folks that are working to protect public health spaces, of course, with human bed bugs and mosquitoes and, protecting our livestock, our animals. Veterinarians are needing to be savvy within the entomological sciences. But of course, agriculture, as we've covered, many folks don't realize there's a forensic side of entomology. When someone passes, especially if there's a murder, for example, we can use entomological evidence. So insects interact with dead bodies, and we are able to gain knowledge that often can help bring justice for that individual that's been wrongfully taken. So I work closely with some forensic entomologists, a part of the international nonprofit NecroSearch. So they are approached by law enforcement to help find clandestine graves. So there's a lot of really interesting knowledge we can gain from looking at forensic entomology. It's a very important branch of entomology. And then, of course, within forests and within urban spaces, we have folks that specialize as well. So it's quite a big and old science. I think folks often are overwhelmed by entomology. It's a very, it can, with all the biology and how diverse insects are and their different life stages, their tremendous amount of biodiversity, it can be an overwhelming thing. So hopefully breaking this down gives you a little bit more context on how this is really applied within our society. But there's many benefits of having arthropods on the planet. I mean, they've really been around for 600 million years. I mean, that's 400 million years older than some of, when dinosaurs were walking the planet. So you can imagine just how, that founding entry into the world, it's really critical. They're vital in really nearly every ecosystem. I think pollinators get focused on a lot. That's why I chose a predator. So this is a robber fly you see pictured here. It's eating one of our soft wing soldier beetles here for lunch. Robber flies rob their prey items right out of the air. They're similar to how a dragonfly would hunt for prey. And this helps to balance the ecosystem at times. So it can be, I don't think insects are often thanked for all that they're doing out there passively. Cleaning up the ecosystem, the decomposers, our cleanup crew. I don't see many people out there thanking yellow jackets for cleaning up the fish on the sides of the lake that would otherwise, make it a really pretty, it'd be gross if we had dead bodies and feces everywhere that never went away. It's not that you wouldn't want to live on that planet, it's that you couldn't. It wouldn't be a sanitary place. We need those, we need carbon, and we need carbon-based organisms to be recycled and nutrients to be put through a nutrient cycling system. So, returning to be plant nutrients, et cetera, et cetera. This is a critical thing. Insects and arthropods really are generally not thanked for. So keep that in mind. There's a place out there for that fly or that wasp. But yes, many good behaviors come from the kingdom of arthropods. So not only worldwide are they eaten as a nutritional animal protein. Here in America, we're very culturally, I think, often against that. I'm really trying to break down those barriers here just even for a moment. Not everywhere in the world has the infrastructure to grow animal protein and distribute it at mass the way that we have chosen to approach that infrastructure here. Many folks make available what is in the ecosystem, and insects are often very abundant. So there's tremendous evidence and examples of this across the world, of really wonderful interactions of folks interacting with their ecosystem to forage insects and feed their families. So on top of that, maybe a little more acceptable to some folks is we get products from insects. So, we've domesticated the silkworm for silk production, the European honeybee for honey production. Folks are fine often with eating lobsters and shrimps and the sister group out of the sea. We're fine with that culturally, but when we start talking about eating insects, folks get a little squirmy. But just keep in mind that we're the minority there. Most of the world eats insects. But, zooming back out, looking at just the benefits of insects in our ecosystems, in our garden, on our farm, in the city, we rely on insects for a lot of services. So the balancing of the ecosystem, and then of course plant pollination. So most of the plants that we grow for crop plants are often insect pollinated, but I think folks often don't focus in on all of the native plants, in our naturalized ecosystems that are insect pollinated. Those plants in turn provide food for other wildlife. They provide, they fight soil erosion. They help hold the soil on the mountainsides. Those plants existing year after year because of insect pollination that's made possible because that insect pollinator originally allows for that plant to reproduce year after year. So, insects have plenty of needs themselves, which they get from their habitat within that ecosystem. So, plants can support populations of desirable insects, as I've mentioned, some of these predators that are hunting within the garden, helping the gardener out, but we also have pollinators that are very important in the ecosystem. But we also have, plants that may contribute to the incidence of pests because they're present in the environment and there's an insect that interacts with that plant, and it might cause issues in terms of, plant value across that landscape. So, just want to drive home, predator insects, they're very beneficial for the ecosystem because they're balancing those populations of non-desirable insects, so pests in our garden, so things that otherwise might eat our plant. And sometimes they're, this bee assassin, for example, just for lunch this day chose another soldier beetle, but it may have been a bee one day too. So prey items can vary. So it's not always a good thing that they're balancing, the ecosystem. But most of the time, their presence has been longstanding and they're not considered harmful. We need them to balance the level of spiders we have, the mosquitoes, the grasshoppers, some of these things that their populations can swing far out of control as it is. And without the presence of some of their predators, it could more often swing out of control in terms of our human lens, and that may be a negative thing. So, insects have many needs: food for their young and food for the adults, and of course, shelter and on-site habitat it's imperative to have when we're looking at our gardens and how we can landscape for birds. We should think about how we can landscape for all wildlife. I think that's a really lovely thing to do. Figuring out how to keep certain wildlife out is another challenge, like deer and rabbits, etc. But we want to welcome certain wildlife into our gardens, and often birds and insects are very welcome. And so providing that on-site habitat and, like, for example, larval plants for butterflies. Many people may plant flowers that are nectaring plants for the adult butterflies, but those butterflies may often lay their young only on a certain set of plants or on one plant, and you want to make sure that's in your landscape too, just to make sure that you're providing that on-site habitat for the insects in need. But just going back, 600 million years, right? I threw that teaser out there at you. Arthropods have been around for a tremendous amount of time. Really, they're the first animals to evolve flight, to swim in the oceans, to crawl on land, crawl back into the ocean, crawl on land. They're incredibly ancient. When there was more oxygen in the atmosphere, there were all that oxygen would have been toxic to, carbon-based life forms unless they built larger biomass to deal with all that oxygen. So we had very large insects and arthropods at that time in the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, for example. We had millipedes the size of golf carts, and, this was just down in New Mexico. So there's a fossil record that indicates that this millipede here, you can see the scientists in New Mexico pictured on the left, there's massive insects, or there was evidence of that. So if you have a problem with insects of today, you can at least be thankful you weren't born walking the planet when the dinosaurs were, because you'd have dragonflies the size of birds of prey. So around the tropics today, around the equator, we still have a lot of oxygen. It's where our Earth is most oxygen rich. And we have some of the largest arthropods remaining there today. So, we have big rhinoceros beetles down in Central America that, are the size of oranges or something like that. So insects still will do this, just not quite on the level they did millions of years ago. But arthropods, I've mentioned this word a few times. Let's define it. So these are animals that all have jointed legs. Arthropod is how that translates. So they also have segmented bodies as well. This has allowed this animal body form can be manipulated. They have been able to grow extra mouth parts, sets of wings, different appendages for some of their very complex biology. And this body form is the building blocks of that. So they also wear a suit of armor, so they have an exoskeleton. Humans have endoskeletons, so we're the opposite. Our hard skeletal structure is on the inside, and our soft, squishy stuff is on the outside. So when you have an exoskeleton and you're an insect, it's the opposite. So think of it as a suit of armor. Your skeletal structure, that suit of armor is on the outside, which means as you develop, you outgrow that suit of armor. You need to reform that suit of armor as you age because your size will change. And you can see they do this through the process of molting. So they're shedding that suit of armor. This is a terrestrial isopod, the sobugs or roly-polies I hear very commonly. So, who are the arthropods? Sorry, my photo was supposed to cover that guy up. There you go. We have the Chelicerata, so our arachnids and allies. So even horseshoe crabs, I think often people think they're crustaceans. They're actually chelicerates, which is pretty unique. And many folks know millipedes and centipedes. They may not realize they're myriapods, but this is also a type of arthropod. So just like our scorpions and our spiders and our horseshoe crabs, myriapods are also arthropods. And extinct are, the trilobites. And of course, we have insects too. So class Insecta is really the meat and potatoes of arthropoda, at least in my eyes. It's probably not true in terms of biodiversity. There's a lot of invertebrates out there, but insects do make up, really, I should say invertebrates make up 70% of described animal life. So insects aren't at 70%. I'll correct my slide. It's invertebrates. And so it's a little bit larger of a group, but that's always impressive to me. If you call yourself an animal lover, it's important to realize 70% of that animal kingdom don't even have a backbone. So they're invertebrates. And all of our insects are invertebrates. So they fall within that slice of pie. I mean, their biodiversity is tremendous. Why they exist in really nearly every ecosystem and have found ways to survive in all of these ecosystems. They, of course, go through metamorphosis, so just giving you some background on how insects grow. Some go through massive, complete changes from when they're all starting as an egg. Most of them are not born as live young. That there is an exception here and there, but most of them are laid as an egg and they hatch. And, for the example of a butterfly and a caterpillar, that caterpillar is the larval stage. It's laid on a particular plant in the landscape by that mother butterfly, and it's starving. It becomes this hungry, voracious teenager. It's eating all of the plant material it can. So that larval host plant often is eaten by these caterpillars. And then they go through a massive change. They enter a pupal stage where they become pretty much genetic soup. And then their genome reorganizes itself through certain cells being programmed to die, giving birth to new cells that form and create new structures using the same genome. But then they end up expressing very different aspects of that genome as an adult. So it's quite the magic of metamorphosis is still being unlocked by scientists today. I think that's really something to, just focus on one aspect of how entomology is complex. There's one for you to sink your teeth in and enjoy. But the vast majority of insects, it's kind of split either way how insects develop. Other insects will not go through a complete change, and they're just miniature versions of themselves until they finally start growing wings in that final stage. So not all insects go through a massive change, just like the grasshopper is depicted here. But beetles and butterflies, some of these very famous characters do go through this very complete and massive change, making, I think, entomology pretty complex to study because you have one animal that looks totally different depending on its age. So why we're here today is, looking at some of the ways insects survive. So visual trickery. So it's really important, in many species, these stripes and the patterning of that animal can conceal its presence. And this often leads to increased survival strategies. So they, seamlessly blend into their surroundings and their environment, providing this crucial edge on survival. So that's really what this talk is built around today. I want to just give some context here with Picasso. As an artist myself, I find a lot of inspiration from the visual art world and art history, but felt this was an appropriate connecting piece here of context. So, Picasso educated on how camouflage was an example of cubism. So this is a form of art, actually, avant-garde art movement, that he helped Stein, and they helped create this, wonderful, very untraditional style of art that for their time was, pretty profound, I will say. I don't think at the time it was appreciated for what it is today, like so many good things. But, animals have evolved survival through camouflage in general, these aposematism, so standing out and blending in are really types of insect camouflage. So whether you're standing out in a way trying to appear as something that you're not, or you're blending in and you are cryptic and nothing can detect your presence because you look exactly like that environment, like this lizard here pictured on the sandstone. That allows for these animals to survive. And these are traits that are passed down and are naturally selected for because it allows for these animals to survive, especially insects. So let's talk about blending in for a while. So hiding in plain sight. You can see here this wonderful owl that blends in perfectly to that bark. Those feathers are immaculate. It's almost identical. And then in this insect photo, you can see this bright, shiny, metallic blister beetle eating on these, golden banner flowers. It's a type of pea that grows up in the montane or, lower elevations even. Sometimes I'll see this plant. But early in the summer, this plant blooms, and I didn't notice there was a spider blended in right below that beetle, ready to eat it for lunch. So when I took this photo, I didn't even have a clue I was taking a photo of two arthropods. I just thought I had the one. So just a little quick plug that taking photos, especially of insects, often leads to, that photo data is loaded full of good, juicy bits when you look at it later. There's always more to see. But insects are masters of color. They have chemical properties, whether they're lipids within their integument or physical structures on their bodies that allow for this color to exist. So one really famous example are our scale-winged insects. So just like fish, butterflies, and moths, the scale-wing insects have scales on them. They're different types than fish scales, but still a scale nonetheless. It's dry and papery. And that is a physical structure that sits on that membrane of that insect's wing and is allowing for light to refract off of it and reflect. And we're basically able to detect that presence of visual light. And there's even structures on these scales that are basically very, very tiny structures that form almost crystalline-like patterns, and it allows for light to change as you look at that scale. So this is you see the orange side of that scale zoomed in and the green side. So those are basically able to change color and look very metallic based on these crystal-like structures that they form. And you can see this net-like microscopy photo here that's in black and white that shows some of those crystalline structures on an insect scale's wing, so on this butterfly's wing. But the power of camouflage in the animal kingdom, it's really not just about blending in, which we'll get into. It's not limited to visual cues. Camouflage, can be a very dynamic process, and it can be used for offensive purposes too. So it's quite complex. I think most folks, when they think of insect camouflage, they may think of stick insects or leaf insects, which we'll cover. But I want to get into something first off about, something more specific that we call shadow camouflage in the animal kingdom. So basically utilizing natural patterns and textures and embedding those into the way that animal looks. So when they're hiding in plain sight, their wings and have the pattern of that environment, and it's this disruptive patterning that can hide the true insect body from, let's say, a bird that's hungry for lunch. So let's take this as an example. This is a butterfly I found down in Costa Rica. I actually don't have it identified. I should. This is a brushfoot butterfly. It's a tropical one. And you can see here just how wonderfully its wings capture what may look like sticks or leaves, and then light shining through those leaves within the rainforest canopy. So this is an example of, shadow camouflage. An insect, when its wings and its perch, as this butterfly is, sunning, safely so on a plant, hiding in plain sight, she feels safe knowing that her wings, when they're folded up, blend her into that environment. So a bird is way less likely to see her, if at all. But there's a lot of benefits of camouflage. There's obviously, a lot going into selecting for these traits. And over time, these are things that manifest and become incredible tools for survival. But it benefits them in terms of predation. So being able to hide, not just from something that wants to eat you, but being able to hide from something that you want to eat so that you can eat it. These are good these are good tools to have if you're an insect or an arachnid, like this crab spider that's camouflaged itself quite like a lime green, creamy color. Sometimes they're bright yellow. Sometimes they're dark brown when they're hiding on bark. But they change, not one animal will change, but there's different species within this group that basically try to camouflage themselves based on where they're more commonly hunting. So this is one of the flower hunter crab spiders that was, taking out this bee that was visiting for pollen. So this spider it lays in wait for its lunch to come right up, and then it's got two pairs of long legs to grab that insect that becomes lunch. So, survival tactics, it's avoiding predation, just being able to live your life freely and not have to worry about being eaten because you look just like that flower. Nothing's really going to be able to detect your presence there. Maybe an entomologist if they know where to look. But this works quite well with hiding from your enemies, if you will, the things that eat you, or protecting your offspring. So it's a really good one. Hiding your eggs so that they don't get eaten by a ground beetle, or something searching for eggs and a sweet treat. So if you want to hide that, and camouflage helps animals do this. Background matching. So really the ability to blend into their surroundings by matching either colors or patterns or textures. Leaf insects are famous for this, stick insects as well, but here's one of the crab bark spiders I was mentioning. When they're brown in color, they blend into bark, immaculately. So look at that. That's amazing. Animals across all of the animal kingdom do this. There's very similar themes that you can draw. In building this talk, I felt like it would be more relatable to have some animals embedded within it. So here's another owl just mimicking that incredible tree bark. Really pretty profound tool. I've mentioned the disruptive coloring portion before, and I think this one can be harder for folks to wrap their heads around, but I'll do my best here, and we can talk about this at the end if need be. But patterns are used by insects, and they can be very striking. This is something almost like, wow, that insect stands out because of this. But really, truly, what these shapes and colors do, especially to like an aerial predator, is it breaks up the shape of that overall insect. If you were to draw the perimeter of that insect, these shapes help break up the true animal shape. So it helps it hide, actually, even though it looks quite bright. This doesn't, in a bird's eye, this is not being detected as a moth. It's just something that may be a series of sticks that are laid over sticks and sun shining through it. And we'll get into eye spots later, but there's examples of moths just here in both of these photos. One that's, blending more in and has these very angular wings. And this shows that disruptive patterning quite well that might help mimic bark. And then you can see here one that's more bright, that it does have quite a few different colors in there. This is an example I struggle to say this is blending in, but it truly, that's what the disruptive patterning is attempting to do. For whatever eats this moth, that disruptive patterning helps to break up the true insect's shape, and it helps to hide it. But this idea of false boundaries, I think, is what I'm getting at. So many animals you can see here depicted have that false boundary. So it may look like they exist in one area, but they don't. And it's because they have some kind of line. This helps them to blend into their environment more than anything else. It hides that actual body line. That's what I'm getting at. Like that shape of that animal existing in the environment is blending in better because of the physical presence of these false boundaries or these lines and disruptive patterns we see in their feathers, in their hair, on their scales. I won't probably read through this, but there's many types of disruptive coloration. So whether contrast is used or blending of colors, these false edges, and this movement dazzle, which you may be familiar with, I'm going to forget the name of this jumping spider that does this. It might be called the peacock jumping spider, but I think I'm reaching there. I'm not remembering it properly, but it glitters on its abdomen and it throws that abdomen up and it shakes it and it does a little bit of a dance and it makes it harder for things to track it. But here's some examples. I embedded some photos just so we don't have to read the words, but these high contrast patterns, spots and stripes, disrupt that animal's body line. So whether you have a butterfly or some of these larger predaceous cats, they all utilize this. It helps them as a tool. Lines, here's an example of a caterpillar blending in or doing its best to disrupt its own true colors with these long, dark, linear black lines that run along its body, making it look more like a stem than a caterpillar, making it more difficult, maybe not impossible, but more difficult for a predator to detect. And you can see this, there's just phenomenal examples of this in the insect kingdom. These are, tropical flat-headed wood-boring beetles from mainly the tropics, and you can just see some of their, incredible disruptive patterns and colors. Sorry for the grainy photo. But other animals do this too. I think this helps us relate, just how critical this is for animal survival, not just insect survival. So, lizards are blending into their environment. Seahorses are blending in. I tried to choose some weird ones for you guys. Look at that blending into coral. I mean, that is just fabulous. Chameleons, I think, get a lot of attention in this space because they have really special cells that allow them to change their color. They're one of the only animals that instantaneously can blend into one environment versus another. I mean, most insects, it takes a few generations to be able to change that drastically. So these cells that chameleons have are quite special. Birds are using feathers to camouflage themselves. During one stage of the year, they're maybe all white. And during the summer, they're a brown and mottled pattern to blend into a non-snowy landscape. So animals far and wide utilize these tools to blend in and to camouflage themselves. Look at that. It looks like a pile of leaves, but that's a pit viper. So incredible. This movement dazzle, here's some additional examples since I was struggling earlier. When animals move, it actually creates patterns that cause a confusing visual effect. So some of these, I think that might not be a true octopus, it might be a squid. I'm not sure, but I can visualize the video of this thing I was looking at. But it's amazing the way you should do yourself a favor. I should have embedded a video. I apologize, I didn't. Look at this movement dazzle on these squids. It's amazing the way that they, within just seconds, they have this amazing change of colors. And it could freak something out that was trying to attack it or track their movement. It makes it harder for them to be detected in multiple ways. And, of course, this movement, so like a rattlesnake, it may be trying to fool you with that shake of its, maybe for warning, but I think there's folks that argue that this is movement dazzle. So, self-decoration is a wonderful one to cover before I run out of time here. Insects or other animals like this turtle will decorate themselves with parts of the environment. Why invent it? Just carry it along with you. So this physical appearance changes of this insect, allowing it to be camouflaged, or a turtle or many other animals. So this is this self-decoration piece, and it gets weirder, folks, if you can believe it. So these are tortoise beetle larvae. So this is an insect, and yes, I'm going to talk more about poop. Tortoise beetles poop into a shield that is like a rock hard concrete shield that they use as kind of like a turtle shell over them. And it's funny because their adults are actually called tortoise beetles, which I just find hilarious that their larvae kind of act like a tortoise too. The adults actually kind of look like they have a shell. So it's just incredible. This soft-bodied, squishy marshmallow can protect itself with its poop. So you think entomology was weird at first. I'm hopefully just scratching the surface here, folks. But moving on from the weirdness, crypsis it's defined as a type of camouflage for folks that are particular. It can transcend into behavior as well. So you may be an insect that looks identically camouflaged to a leaf, like this katydid. I mean, it's green. Its legs look like petioles of leaves. It may also shake itself back and forth in the wind to try to look like a leaf. So behavior can be cryptic as well as the way that this is physically appearing. So, we've mentioned stick insects. They're famous for this. They will look like a stick. They will act like a stick. So they will move back and forth just like the wind would blow them. And it's incredible with these leaf insects. They shake, they quake like a quaking aspen leaf. These are mostly found in like Australia and the tropics throughout Asia. The continent of Africa has a lot of these phasmids. Phasmatodia is where stick insects and leaf insects are grouped. So, I mean, look at these. That some of them mimic leaves that are green, and some in transition and dead leaves too. So it's profoundly creative, really. They're not making decisions about this, of course. This is because it's allowing for survival. So it's those traits that are passed to their young. And over time, you end up with these just immaculate examples within the animal world. Another really, truly amazing example, we don't have them here in Colorado, but these flower and orchid mantises are incredible. Look at that Phalaenopsis orchid, and then that mantid on the left, looking just like one of her petals. And then on this photo of the right, a real true showcase of that mantid. I just love their eyes. They're so regal, truly royalty. But ground mantids will mimic, the sand or leaves. Some of them have eye spots, which we'll get into how those are used to scare off predators. That's also a type of camouflage. And then, of course, mantids, some that mimic leaves. We do have to get to standing out, and I hope I don't run too much out of time. But standing out's a fascinating aspect of the arthropod kingdom. The use of colors that animals have evolved to deter predators. So saying, "Hey, I'm toxic. Don't eat me." This color pattern says you don't want to mess with me. So many animals, whether they're toxic or not, will try to use that color pattern, that aposematic coloring, the bright black, red, and yellow, orange. So this coloration, I love this. It does fill the world full of beautiful colors, but it doesn't always mean good things. So it often is a warning. It's, stay away. I eat a toxic plant. Like this is a milkweed eater, the monarch butterfly larva. So milkweed is toxic. That toxin passes into this insect. So birds have learned to avoid eating this. And the patterns also share that with the animal world. Yeah. So guess what I'm trying to get here through? Let's move on. There's too many words for my brain. Okay, so many young and adult forms utilize this patterning. This is the larva and the adult of the same animal. And in different stages of life, they'll even use this set of colors to warn predators away. So mimicry is a type of camouflage. So when insects mimic other objects or other organisms, it's considered a type of camouflage. They're blending in as something that they're not, right? But they often stand out. They're not blending in with these things. And there's several types we'll go through. Of course, Batesian mimicry, mainly harmless species, things that can't sting, for example, like this flower fly I've drawn, deter predators because they are black and yellow and they look like something that stings. Many insects that are stinging insects. Some of the wasps that are social, especially, are black and yellow in coloration, saying, "Hey, I sting. I've got to pack some heat." Other insects will mimic this just to pretend to, say, "Hey, I'm scary," but really they don't have any of the anatomy to do anything scary. But this helps everybody in the ecosystem. Whether you sting or not, these sets of colors help ward off predators. So these are patterns we see repeated over and over and over. But Batesian is mainly the harmless species are mimicking the harmful ones. Like this, Ariostalis is the genus of this fly that looks like a bee. It's mimicking a bee, like a honeybee, but it's not able to sting like one. But it's fooling birds. Maybe humans too. Here are examples of beetles, mimicking wasps, or moths mimicking wasps. Because if you look like a wasp, things don't want to mess with you, whether you're a human or a bird or other animals seeking prey. So looking like something that's scary does a lot for you if you don't actually have anything to be scary with. Mullerian mimicry, I kind of touched on this. It's mainly it's this series of colors that are repeated in the environment. So, this bumblebee has a black and yellow patterning, and this insect stings, but so do the wasps, this yellow jacket that's drawn. So sharing those similar warning colors goes an awfully long way for insects. This is a wonderful example of how, based on region, this occurs within certain wasps. So these are velvet ants that are known as wingless wasps. And you can see how within certain regions, matching the colors. So let's just look at the yellow region, the western species of Dasyamutilla, these wonderful wasps. They all mimic one another within the environment and share a lot of those similarities. And this benefits all of them because they all look scary, and birds learn, oh, I shouldn't eat the orange and red ones, essentially. A quick example of, some caterpillars are venomous, like this photo on the bottom right with the moss growing. That's a true caterpillar. Its hairs have venom in it. And, this baby bird mimics that because a baby bird can't do much to defend itself. It wants to be left alone. So if it looks like a stinging venomous caterpillar, it's not going to often get touched. This bird is found to be acting like a caterpillar too. It just sits and will hide itself, just like a caterpillar sitting on a plant would look. So just another example here. Pacamian mimicry, worth mentioning. It's really like a wolf in sheep's clothing is the best way to describe this. So we'll use fireflies as our example. Fireflies, when they're mating, they have certain flashing patterns that indicate I'm this species, come and mate with me. There are fireflies that mimic the patterns of other species, and then they'll eat them. So they fool using that flashing pattern, but they're really just hungry for lunch. So they learn the flashing patterns of other relatives of theirs, and then they'll come and they'll predate on them. So a wolf, in sheep's clothing, like Little Red Riding Hood kind of. And then, another great example is this angler fish. So, they're resembling a small fish, but they're awaiting in the dark. Then these fish get eaten, but they're attracted to this, that's why they're called angler fish. They're fishing in ways. I think the best one within this, the wolf in the sheep's clothing, are these snapping turtles. So, the snapping turtle's tongue looks like an earthworm. And then, of course, a fish thinks, oh, great, I just scored this earthworm. What a wonderful day. Not so much. Crunch. So they get snapped by the turtle. So just some real world examples for you. And really, lastly, what we'll cover, so I have a few minutes for questions, is Gilbertine mimicry. Actually, I've been privileged to meet Larry Gilbert. He's down at the University of Texas in Austin. He's bred heliconius butterflies on the roofs there for about 50 years. And he's studied how eye spots in butterflies are used to flash at predators. So if all of a sudden you fly up upon this moth and you see these eyes, when you're expecting to eat a moth, you think something's staring at you. I mean, this bird is coming in about ready to have a heart attack, I imagine. So eye spots are used and can be used very strategically by animals and especially insects to say, don't eat me. I look like another animal. And it can really freak out something that's in pursuit of that insect. So caterpillars often have markings that resemble snake eyes. I mean, so just some really incredible displays of, creative uses of color. Like you can see here, like you can probably barely even tell which one on the right set of photos is the real snake. I mean, I should have marked it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the top two photos. There's the actual snake and the bottom is the caterpillar. I mean, I truly am guessing because I should have marked it. So forgive me, but just goes to show you, I mean, label your slides, but also incredible mimicry here. Wow. These eye spots, often butterflies will flash them in an instant, and that can really scare off and ward away predators. So that's a particular type of mimicry. They're mimicking an owl's eye, for example. All of a sudden, if you were a bird and you were landing in an owl's nest, you'd think twice about pursuing lunch at that point. You would, get out of Dodge. So, a lot of these things can go hand in hand. So, when camouflage fails and you've been discovered, you could flash those eyes at the bird of prey eating you, the snake eating you, the rodent, and you can flash something scary. It may be your last line of defense, but you have that tool as a part of your patterning. So a lot of these insects would choose to do that. But of course, counter shading and disruptive coloration were themes we talked about in this talk today. And I love this, and they really should be recognized as, I think, as one of the most wonderful forms of, Darwin's great law. I mean, of natural selection. I mean, this is driving survival of insects and animals really worldwide on our planet. This is an incredible form, of Darwin's great law we should celebrate. So we have a quick quiz here, and I'll probably go fast so I have some time for questions, but this looks like a caterpillar, is it? Yes, it is. It's not a twig, but of course that's what it's mimicking. Are these flies or wasps? Maybe thinking to your head, we won't be doing this out loud or anything just due to time, but these look like wasps, but they sure are not. They have one pair of wings. They're flies. They've got those big fly eyes as well in both of them, but they mimic wasps or bees, really, something that stings. I like this one. When you find yourself taking pictures of bird poop, you've really entered it as a scientist. But there are moths that look just like bird poop, and this is why I'm often taking photos of bird poop now, because I think it's amazing to be able to show you back and forth. But these are just two moths that look like bird poop. It does a whole lot of good for them. I mean, nothing wants to mess with that, so they go, unminded by most things. Moths or wasps. You just think to yourself for a moment. Wow, it has clear wings. I can see through the wings. It's hairy. I know that moths can have hair. Nope, these are moths. They don't have any stinging anatomy at all. They don't have stingers, but they want to look like something that does. Incredible. A spider or a ladybug, right? And the spider is also probably a predator, but ladybugs are such efficient predators, things don't like to mess with them. This spider has invested time, throughout geologic time, it has evolved to have spots, just like a ladybird beetle, because apparently they're scary beetles. So this spider is, at least thinking so, trying its best. A snakehead or a moth wing. This may be a famous one, so it's not too hard. Hopefully I'm not fooling you too much. But that is our largest moth on the planet, Attacus atlas, the atlas moth. So just an example of how in the rainforest canopy, if that moth opens up those wings and all of a sudden there's two snakes staring at you, you may not want to be eaten, but it's very rare to see specimens that look this nice, actually. Normally they're just murked by birds, and they'll just be tattered wings. This is a pretty nice specimen, actually. So the snakeheads are doing good for it so far. And this is a hard one. Are these ants or are these true bugs? And true bugs have piercing, sucking mouth parts like straws, if that helps. So they may look awfully ant-like, but they are not. They want to look like ants because ants sting. But these just drink fluids from a plant. So it helps for them to look scary and look like ants, but they are truly not. A moth or a twig? Well, the answer is both, folks. So it's both of them in this case, but you get the idea, you get the gist. Just to share some quick resources, there's lots of reading on this literature. If you're curious about the art of insect survival, here's some great, the one on the right is a textbook. The others are just little, almost field guide, quick reads. What founded this talk is this book by Wolfgang and Wickler, The Mimicry in Plants and Animals. This is a wonderful text. I highly recommend reading this if you're interested in the talk I've shared today and want to learn more, and just some other great books to accompany the Mimicry book. And if you have teens or you've got children at home, there are wonderful books written for their age groups as well. I love this Mimicry and Camouflage in Nature coloring book. It's very well done by the Dover Coloring Book Company. But of course, please ask me about anything I talked about or more with the time remaining if I don't have to cut you off right away. But thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mel. I did really poor on is it a wasp, is it a fly? Anyway, I need to do better. Right now, we don't have any questions in the Q&A, so I guess we won't keep people, but thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I learned a lot. I was thoroughly engaged, especially with the poop. I don't know, maybe I'm weird too. So thank you everybody for joining us. Please come back on October 8th or any other second Wednesday of the month, and hopefully we can get Mel to join us next year for more interesting, fascinating worlds of the insect life. So thank you all and take care.